Welcome to The Quill and the Quantum, the podcast where we explore the intersection of artificial intelligence and the art of writing. I'm your host, Kathy Norris, and in each episode, we'll talk to those authors and other creatives who use or refuse to use AI in their writing process.
Today's guest is teacher, writer, and martial artist Karin Spirn. Karin has a PhD, in English from the University of Michigan, and has taught community college classes, English classes, for the past 20 years. Karin, welcome to the program.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Now, Karin, I know I'm supposed to talk with you about AI, but I was captivated in your bio when I read that you were a martial artist. So, which martial arts do you practice, and how did you get into it?
Well, I practice a number of martial arts. The longest one is kickboxing. I do several types of kickboxing, and I teach kickboxing in Oakland. I run a gym, and it's a nonprofit that also teaches self-defense. And I think a lot of my approach to writing instruction also, was developed because I've been a community college instructor and a martial arts practitioner for the same amount of time. So I feel like my thoughts about writing were really shaped by my own experiences training too.
Oh, I love the idea that the intellectual exercise of writing is informed by this physical activity. There seem to be some core truths that would flow from one activity to the other. That my little sparks are just going off in my brain, thinking about how wonderful these connections must be. Is that what you find?
And particularly what I found, and this just really influences my approach to teaching, is that the way that we teach writing and a lot of things, but, writing, I teach in a community college. So the way that we teach is very, like the people always say the problem with teaching is you're both the coach and the judge.
Ah,
And, so in terms of, I think of ways that we teach writing that we would never teach like a physical skill that way. Like we would never say, oh, you've disappointed me because you didn't do that properly, or, things that people write on papers, all the time. We just meet people where they are and try to help them. And you want your student in a martial arts context to know that you're their defender and you're their advocate. And, we don't always approach education, teaching in our education system that way. So that's
oh,
definitely influenced my teaching style.
oh, of course not. I'm just aghast at the idea of someone writing something. It sounds like a mini agent in training, so you can write rejection letters to they're already ready to write rejection letters to authors submitting, would-be authors submitting their work.
Yeah.
How
I mean,
how
people have gotten a
dare
lot
you
better.
disappoint me?
Yeah. No, people have gotten a lot better, but when I started teaching writing, there were teachers that would, students would tell me like, oh, the teacher wrote like I was really disappointed in your efforts here. I'm like, like this isn't about you. So that's
The nerve.
yeah, and people write, and you've probably seen it. I mean, the paper's marked with, the red pen, papers
Yes.
with, awkward, or like my favorite is like question mark, question mark, question mark in the margin. Like, so there's just a lot of really negative associations that students have, with getting feedback on their writing because of these practices. So
Oh, it's true. I belong to a writing group, and we meet every Saturday, but we give each other permission be very blunt and honest. And we've been in this group. This group has been in existence for more than five years. So the level of trust has definitely been established. So when I hear them critique my work, I do my very, very best not to take it personally. I'm not going to say that always succeed, but I do my level best not to take it personally, but that's because we have a relationship.
right.
I I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I was introduced to your work, Karen, when I read your review of Deborah Miranda's new book, title one in his title, "The Eye in History: Bad Indian and the Future of Academic Writing." And the question has been posed, people are wondering if Chat GPT will kill the student essay. And I'm going to read your response, your quote, because I love this. You
Mhm.
go, I, for one, the question, will Chat GPT kill the student essay? Karen's response, I, for one, hope it does. In fact, like many other professors, I've long fantasized about the demise of this perfunctory and soulless genre, one that seemingly invites artificial intelligence as its rightful author. As educational technology expert Brenda Clark Gray insightfully puts it, quote, "We've trained our learners to write like robots, and shockingly, robots are also good at writing like robots." Love this.
Well,
Love
and
this.
shout out to Brenda Clark Gray. That essay is called Breaking What Is All, was a blog post called Breaking What Was Already Broken, AI and Writing Assignments. It's quite amazing. And I first encountered that quote through a tweet, and then we had to search down where that tweet came from because it's really so incredible. That final part about we taught our students to write like robots, and robots are also good like at writing like robots.
Who knew,
Yeah.
Karen? Who knew that robots would be good at writing like robots?
Yeah.
When did you first? Because you've been in the trenches for a significant period of time. When do you remember when you first noticed the impact of AI on student writing?
Yeah, I think I should say, I guess the thing that was happening before, probably around starting maybe 2018, 2017, was that students were having these essay bots write their essays. And the essay bots, yeah, this was like, it was a site called Essay Bot, and it would was the main one. And what that site did was it pulled um, paragraphs on your topic from the internet, and then changed like every third word so that to a synonym, so it couldn't be caught by a plagiarism checker. But the you'd have this very garbled sounding thing, because, like, for example, a good example I thought of is there was a place where they had written lawyer, and I couldn't figure out why they'd written lawyer. It was a strange word in the sentence, and it turned out it had originally been advocate. So since an advocate can be, a synonym for an one synonym, so it would choose like context inappropriate synonyms frequently, because it was just, and it was horrifying. And then you would be, as an ethical teacher, you'd be trying to find the original source material. I could sometimes find it because I was teaching on unusual texts, so it was easier to find the original thing, but it would take me still like 2 hours to find it. If you were writing on a more open topic, like your opinion on, on tax policy or something like that, it would be almost impossible, because they would take different sentences from all different things and then change every third word. And then more recently, the Chat GPT, I think people were more worried about it before I started seeing it. So there was a big, kind of kerfuffle about it, in the academic circles. And then I started seeing a lot of it about a year ago. Where, and the funny thing about it is, in an academic context, is the way you would spot it. Well, part of it is, and I brought an example, but it uses this very, very, like, I call it like, kind of, what's the word for this? Very inflated diction. It's not very fake. It sounds like what you would, like when people used to say, in my high school, they'd say, "Oh, an English class is just about learning to BS." That's what it sounds like. The way people write, it's just very inflated, very
highfalutin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Highfalutin. And then the other thing about it is that it'll make up quotes or events. So I would get these responses that were just like journal responses, because now we're teaching online so much. So I'd have these journal responses to books, and they'd be like, not what happened in the book, and I'd be like, that author would never say that. That's not accurate. And luckily I could. So it was easy, because I didn't have to then try to find the original source. I just say you get 0 because this quote, like, this isn't about the book. So that's when I started to see it, see the use of it about a year ago.
I'm really curious. You said something that I didn't realize, that a teacher, if you suspect plagiarism, then there's a requirement that you identify the source, or the
It's
ethical
not
thing to do is to identify the source.
exactly.
Oh,
Because we don't like to accuse our students of plagiarism, and we want to think the best of them. They want to, give them, the full, grace and benefit of the doubt. And so if, it used to be that, someone would plagiarize from the internet, and then you would Google and you could usually find it, because again, they don't write and a lot of the time the students there's students who are doing this really well, who were not catching.
sure.
I'm sure there's students who are plagiarizing well. And my thought on it is, well, I'm not paid enough to be sleuthing down all of that. And also they clearly they have the skills they need if they're able to do it. If they're able to do it, they have the skills they need. That's not my, but what you find is these people who are really struggling, the students who are really struggling, and they can't even tell that what they've turned in is not indicative of their own writing. So they used to just take things from the internet, and you'd say, well, you certainly, the gadfly is not a word I would think you'd be using, or something like that. And then you Google the thing and it comes right up. So you don't want to accuse someone without documentation. That's just, for your own, you can, because, and now we've had to more, well, I've had a paper where I said, I think this was written by ChatGPT, and the student said, no, it wasn't. And I said, well, I think so, because the quotes are all made up. These quotes aren't in the book. And she said, no, they're from somewhere. They'll come up with all kinds of reasons. So, you want to have the documentation, but you with ChatGPT, there's not much you can do, but you just say, I don't, so we've had to change our policies quite a bit.
Oh, that sounds, the idea of spending that much time tracking down the original source multiplied by the number of students that you must read, the essays that you must read is mind-boggling.
Well, one thing I used to tell them in that chat in that essay bot days is I used to say, in my syllabus in my first day, I'd say, don't ever do this, because when you use this, your teacher will know you plagiarized it, but your teacher doesn't want to accuse you of plagiarism without evidence. So your teacher will spend hours trying to find the source, at which point they're going to be kind of infuriated. I said, so I think I don't recommend that you do this. Like, that's a bad idea. Like, don't use this. Just, take the 0, or just ask for help, ideally ask for help. So,
I'm giving you fair warning, just fess up right now, or don't do it at all, and everyone will be happier. I thought I heard you mention that you had brought an example of something that you wanted to discuss. Please do.
Yeah, I did. I brought an example of the ChatGPT paper, and I also would really like to talk about better approaches to writing that don't encourage students to write like robots. But I thought it's funny to see an example. This is a paper a student turned in. They're writing about they must have given the ChatGPT like a explanation of the topic of this essay that they were writing about, because it knows, like, sometimes it just really makes up what this was an essay called, or an article called Fit, that's from a beautiful anthology called Somewhere We Are Human, about undocumented immigration. And this is about, so this is what the ChatGPT wrote. This is a student who, struggles with writing generally, and this is the paper. In conclusion, Fit is more than just an essay. It's a clarion call for introspection, empathy, and multifaceted nature of identity, and the continuous evolution of the self. Through her words, readers are reminded of the strength that can be forged in adversity, and the beauty in finding one's unique place in the world. And it just goes on like this. You're like, you didn't write this. Like, please don't write like that. So it really is, and I would tell them, a chat, an artificial intelligence is, generative AI. It's a predictive text. So it's writing what it thinks teachers want to hear. And so it comes out in this very, like, teachers want to hear tone, pompous was what I was looking for earlier. Yeah. Very pompous.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You read it. Now that I've been stung, or by mistakenly thinking a piece was written by a human being, now that I'm paying more attention, I do see more red flags. And I think one of the real keys for me has been, if I'm emailing with someone and then I'm looking at their work, and the levels of English are very, very different. It's one thing when you're writing to me in email in your natural language, and then I see something that you said that you wrote, and that's why I always ask the question, oh, and by the way, just for clarification, did you actually write this piece, or not? And then we stumble into that whole area of whether people are going to tell you that they used generative AI. Some people will, and some people won't.
Yeah. That's incredible that people are using it to write published pieces. I guess I knew it's being used to write articles that are sort of content-y, like things where somebody's just, like filler articles that you see on, that on sites that just have to put out a lot of content. But the idea that there's authors, representing their writing, and they had AI write it is that's interesting to think about.
Oh, it gets even more interesting. I had been working with an agent and was looking at a contract for a nonfiction novel I'd written. And for the first time, I saw a clause regarding artificial intelligence, where the agent stated very clearly that if this work had been the result of AI, then it would limit their ability to represent it. And that floored me, because AI is such a broad term. Did they really mean generative AI? Did they really mean Grammarly, when I was using AI to check the spelling of words? It opened up a whole new gray area.
Yep. Oh, well, so that actually brings up this idea of what we're trying to teach them. When you were talking about people, how they were writing emails to you, and then it's different than the pieces that they were writing. So the really nice thing about, or maybe the silver lining about this, and I want to clarify too, that in terms of AI, I don't feel like, there's appropriate uses for it. Like you said, like, students use Grammarly. I've seen people use it. I think a great use of it could be, you did a free writing and now you want it to help you outline your paper where it's helping you generate ideas. I don't love it for that. I just don't like it that much, but I think there's ethical and probably great uses of it. But I think that the reason I really enjoyed that quote and passage by Brenda Clark Gray is because I feel as writing instructors, and I'm a 20-year community college writing instructor, and as writing instructors, I feel it's really our doing, it's the standards that in academia that we've been putting forward. It's the type of writing instruction that we've been doing that's leading to the students wanting to use AI. So I feel like, and right at the same time that this has been, becoming such a focal point in discussions of education and instruction, a lot of my colleagues and I've been working on issues of, and had been kind of promoting, I'm working with colleagues who are promoting this idea of linguistic justice. I work particularly with, and this is a term was coined by amazing professor April Baker Bell at Michigan State University. And originally linguistic justice for her, and her definition is an anti-racist approach to writing instruction. So it comes a lot out of, enforcement of, we call it like edited standard English, or it's like a very, privileged and white dialect of English that has been, enforced in the schools. And as early as 1974, the 4 C's, which is the conference on, let me see if I get it right. I wrote down what it's called. It's the Conference on College Communication and Composition, which is the largest professional organization for writing instruction in the world, I think. Okay. So they in 1974 published, they had a resolution on students' rights to their own language, and that where they affirmed that students should have the right to write in the dialect of their choice and of their upbringing, so that people shouldn't be enforcing a standard English or standardized English on students. And it's never taken off. You see like these kind of places it pops up, but it's never, it was as early as 1974 on the radar of writing instruction. And yet it's gained, after I think George Floyd's murder, it's gained, as education has been thinking again about how we can do better for our students of color. It's been, I think, it's found its time, maybe, because I think that ChatGPT is actually sort of fortuitous, because it's showing the problems of, if we teach everyone to write in this voice that's fake for many of them, they have no investment in writing. They don't have an investment in it. And so they're perfectly willing to put out work that the exercise of writing for them is not about expressing something that is true to them or something that matters to them or exploring their own ideas. It's an exercise of doing a thing that a teacher wants you to do, and I think it's very alienating for a lot of students, and I think it's true for students of color, and I think it's true for white students as well, that allowing them to, so when we've been advocating different practices to allow students to write more in their own voices and from their own perspectives, we find that their writing is stronger. They're not having problems with their grammar because they're writing in a way that is more natural to them. They're writing really powerfully. And, and if they do have problems with, I don't know, I just, if they have problems with grammar, we now have Grammarly to fix that. If it's a little comma problems or something like that, it's not really, emphasizing so much about correctness, and it's not serving them well. And they don't need to learn to write in this robotic way anymore. They can have ChatGPT do it if they want to write, they want to write like that. So we've been really pushing towards, and I've been pushing towards also, because the way we used to write was have them write was so formulaic. It was this very formulaic academic essay. And they were starting to write, I noticed before the pandemic, from templates. And that's what high school was teaching them. So the high school students were responding to the community college students. We were responding to all of us were responding to fears that we're not going to prepare them for the next level. And so we were teaching them, you need to have like really good paragraph structure, and, really focus on your citation, and really focus on, and it's kind of cart before the horse. Like, so they were thought of writing as like, they'd write the topic sentences and they'd pick the paragraph topics, and they hadn't even ever explored what they were trying to write about. And sometimes they'd get A's on essays that just were so soulless, but they hit all the marks. And these were like students who cared. They weren't students who were trying to be soulless. They just like, they were like, oh, I'm a good student. I'm supposed to have topic sentences, and I'm supposed to have a thesis statement, and I'm supposed to have, a main point that I've supported with quotes, and which is all important things to have at times. But I've been moving much more, and a lot of people have, towards, writing that includes, and that's one reason I was so moved by Deborah Miranda's book, Bad Indians, is because she's writing about history, but she's also writing about, it's a memoir and a historical book. She's looking at archival work, and then she's looking at her own family history. She's taking historical documents and making found poetry out of them to kind of emphasize, the cruelty in the language in terms of how they wrote about Mission Indians in the newspaper. And then she's highlighting that through inserting her own voice into it. And I think, things like that type of writing that's about something scholarly, but is also about your viewpoint, is going to be, a real antidote to the desire to plagiarize. It doesn't mean that students should never write things that are scholarly, but I feel they should be opting into, or I guess I should say, maybe it's major and career appropriate, that there's students who want to be academic writers, they're writing that way. The students who want to, be, go get, graduate degrees, they're writing that way. A lot of the students I have now, their goal is to like be a business major, be entrepreneur. That's really popular. And I know as myself, as someone who runs a business and nonprofit, like we're writing blog posts, we're writing GoFundMe, giant, proposals for donations. We need to be able to write with heart. We need to be able to write from our perspective. We need to show what's unique about us. And I feel like those kind of writing skills are going to be just as valid in a modern work context. So we're not preparing them for the real world. We're actually because otherwise this fake writing, they don't take it forward with them. Even without ChatGPT, they don't take it forward. If their writing is such a fake, alienated practice, they don't own it, and I don't think they can use it in the future.
Well, I love how you have closed this circle, because in the essay where there's a discussion about how community colleges are hemorrhaging students, that they have lived through COVID-19 and have a different priorities and different perspectives, that the way to address the issue of the soullessness of the writing is through techniques that you identify, such as positionality statements. But the one that fascinated me was encouraging the use of first-person pronouns and the inclusion of identity-based perspectives. And a
Oh,
light went off in my head. Of course, the antidote to the soulless is the soul. The more personal you're making it, the more credence you give your experience, the less that can be generated by an artificial intelligence. It was like, duh. Fantastic.
yep.
Fantastic.
Oh, I'm so glad that part spoke to you. Yeah. And some of that part comes from Patricia Hill Collins, who wrote this book, Black Feminism, Black Feminist Thought, which is from the 1990s. But it's something that we've been working with it was actually one of these things where I was like, looking for a passage that would speak to this, and was looking back at, earlier texts that were important to me, and found this and was like, oh yes, there, she says it. And she was talking in that piece about how in that book about how, as an African-American woman writing in academia, and she's a sociologist, I believe, she's in the social sciences, she was writing about how alienated she felt, where she felt that she had to write in a way that didn't reflect her community. She had to write in a way that was, not, it felt like she was leaving her people behind to do academic writing. And I think that's what a lot of our students feel. And, and again, we don't say like your viewpoint should be in everything. I mean, if you're writing, a report on, the health of African whales, African whales, I would say Alaskan whales, not African whales. I don't think maybe they have African whales. I would say Alaskan.
I do not know.
I know. If you're writing about, and plant, if you're writing about, biology, you may not want to put your viewpoint in there. If you lived in Alaska and you're like, I have these experiences with Alaskan whales, that might be very valid and interesting to include. So you don't need to include your viewpoint in everything that you write, but having the permission to do so, and knowing that you can you can speak in your own voice, that you can speak, you can make a joke you'd like to make. You can use, expression from your native language. If your, native language is in English, or if you're, from an immigrant family and want to draw on that linguistic wealth for your expression. A big one is I. We've been teaching about use of I because teachers for so long said you can't use I. We have a workshop called, can I use I in my essay that we teach in my school? And because they ask it all the time. And you're like, yeah, there's a context where it's not appropriate. If you're writing, I think before everything, that's just not strong writing. And you can just do it and then cut it out. That's a great editing thing to do. Too many, I think, kind of distracting from your point. But if you're trying to say, my grandmother taught me this, how are you going to say that without using personal pronouns? And why would you take that out? So we're trying. Actually, can I show you? I have a really beautiful example
Of course, please do.
That was one example from a student who gave me permission to share her writing with the Chat GPT one. I didn't ask him because he didn't write it. So but this is a student named Jasmine who has given me permission to share this essay. And this is just a little piece of it. She is a first generation Mexican-American student. She loves writing. She was my class last semester, and it really shows. She's a joy in learning and a joy in writing. And she told me that she was actually, when I read her first essay, I looked back at her introductory letter she wrote to me that I have them write. And she said that she's not very good at writing, and she hopes that I'll be patient because she's been told that her writing's not very clear. Because I looked back to see if she wants to be a writer. I was like, oh, someone they write so well that I look at their intro and they say they love reading and they love writing. She said that she thought her writing was problematic and she hoped that I wouldn't mind. This is a piece she wrote. So the topic was about intelligence and your type of intelligence, because we were reading about different types of intelligence. She said, my parents have never yelled or gotten mad when I showed them a C on a test or my report cards. Both of my parents understand when I get a low score. They would say, study more, you'll get it next time. I love that they never pressured me, but they persuaded me, pushed me into doing better. No me afecta a nosotros, te afecta a ti. It doesn't affect us, it affects you. They've also taught me that my actions have consequences. If I didn't graduate, then it was on me. This saying and many others, my parents taught me the basic things I will need in life: school, hands-on work, and talking. These are the intelligences that formed me. This paragraph that gives me chills when I read it. I don't know why, it's so beautifully composed. And I showed it to some teachers recently, and I said, there's some sentences in there that are oddly composed. Like this and this saying and many others, comma, my parents taught me the basic things I will need in life. I'm like, I guess you could revise that because it's not grammatically correct sentence. It's a beautiful sentence though.
But it's so authentic.
Yeah, it's so authentic. And it's beautifully composed. It's a beautiful piece of writing. And when I told her, I said, this is such an incredible piece of writing. I said, did you enjoy writing it? She said, oh, I loved writing it. I loved writing it so much. I mean, she was so connected to it. She was so excited about it. Her use of Spanish and then, she didn't have to translate the Spanish, but she does just naturally. She talked a lot about like phrases her parents taught her. She talked about how her mother had her parents came from Mexico, in difficult circumstances when they were both at the very young adults, 17, 18. And that the mother had done a little bit of schooling here and then hadn't been able to continue and really regretted it and loved school. And her father struggled in school and was always ashamed about his English. And she was contrasting the two of them and saying she's so proud of both of them and no one should shame her father because he's so intelligent, but he wasn't feeling encouraged in school, and didn't feel like he felt like because his English wasn't strong that he felt ashamed of it at times. It was just such an amazing analysis of what intelligence meant to her. And she was able to write that, using her own flavor, her own, kind of her passionate voice rather than trying to make it sound cold and remote.
No, it feels very warm and alive and human in a way that's hard for me to put into words. And normally I never have a problem with putting things into words, but no, that was beautiful. And thank you for sharing it with us. Is there anything else that you'd want to add? I feel like you have covered all of the bases and all the questions I was going to ask. Did you leave anything out? Is there something you would like to add?
I don't think so. I just hope that listeners will take away this idea of, because I think we do get asked, my colleagues and I who advocate ideas of linguistic justice, so often does this prepare students for the real world or is this dumbing down education? And I just want to really emphasize that it's none of those things. It's really about, in fact, very much in service of intellectualism, of true intellectual rigor, and of skills of writing that will actually prepare you for life, rather than something that's fake rigor and fake writing. So we're really so passionate. I'm so passionate about this idea of linguistic justice, and this idea of encouraging people to use their authentic voice. Something that I obviously care really deeply about. So I hope listeners take that away.
Well, thank you so much, Karin. And if listeners have any follow-up questions, or if they want to, for example, go to your GoFundMe page for your martial arts, how do they connect with you? I don't know if you've got social media, or what's the best way?
I'm on Instagram as and on Facebook under my name, Karin Spirn, KarinSpirn. I can be reached at my college email address, which is, oh, it's goodness, you have to put it in show notes, because it's I teach at a school called Las Positas College, and unfortunately our emails then are like kspirn@laspositascollege.edu, so it's pretty wonky. And our nonprofit is called tufflove.org, TUFFLOVE.org, where we provide self-defense for our community. So that's, if you want to check that out too, you can do that.
Well, what I will do is, in the episode notes, I will provide links to these different ways of connecting with you, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Karin, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed. It's one thing to want to speak to the author. It's another thing to actually be able to speak to an author of a piece that you really liked. So thank you once again for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's been really fun talking to you about it, and I appreciate your kind words about my piece too. It's been really, really nice to talk about this with you.